Welcome to the Recovery Cast, brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private.
Well, hello there. Welcome back to another episode of the Recovery Cast, proudly brought to you by Hills and Rangers Private. My name is Oliver and I am a former addict in recovery. The Recovery Cast is a podcast created by people in recovery from addiction for people in recovery from addiction. There are many definitions of addiction, but we keep it simple. Addiction to us is when people use alcohol, drugs, or certain behaviours repetitively to their detriment. Basically, when it's a problem for them and their families. Therefore, an addict is not necessarily a needle-using junkie in a dark laneway, and an alcoholic is not necessarily a homeless man in a park. Recovery for us means using an active daily process or program to deal with alcohol use disorder, substance use disorder, or other behavioural addictions. People in recovery are committed to complete abstinence. This daily process is as important to being able to live normal lives as daily dialysis is for people with kidney problems. This podcast is meant as a support tool for those in recovery. Now, I myself am a recovering drug addict. However, every day we're going to focus on a different perspective of recovery. Everyone who participates in the podcast is in an active recovery program. We are not affiliated with any one recovery methodology and will focus on a variety of different types of recovery, including 12-step recovery programs such as Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, other programs like Smart Recovery, Celebrate Recovery, Recovery Dharma, Cognitive Behavioural Therapy, and more. And a quick disclaimer, this podcast is intended to be informative. A podcast alone cannot support your sobriety and recovery, so we suggest it only as one component of a daily recovery routine. For more information on what recovery is, please go to www.rehab.melbourne. So, yes, I'm gonna read from today's JFT, Just for Today reading from Narcotics Anonymous, and it is a new month here at the Recovery Cast, so November the 1st, and we are looking at a reading today entitled Awakening. God helps us as we help each other. Basic text, page 52. Our addiction caused us to think almost exclusively of ourselves. Even our prayers, if we prayed at all, were self-centered. We asked God to fix things for us or get us out of trouble. Why? Because we didn't want to live with the problems we'd created for ourselves. We were insecure. We thought life was about getting, and we always wanted more. And in recovery, we get more than just not using. The spiritual awakening we experience in working the 12 steps reveals to us a life we never dreamed possible. We no longer need to worry about whether there will be enough, for we come to rely on a loving higher power who meets all our daily needs. Relieved of our incessant insecurity, we no longer see the world as a place in which to compete with others for the fulfillment of our desires. Instead, we see the world as a place in which to live out the love our higher power has shown us. Our prayers are not for instant gratification, they are for help in helping each other. Recovery awakens us from the nightmare of self-centeredness, strife, and insecurity that lies at the core of our disease. We wake up to a new reality. All that is worth having can be kept only by giving it away. Just for today, my God helps me as I help others. Today I will seek help in giving away the love my higher power has given me, knowing that that is the way to keep it. Really interesting reading. I think, I can totally identify with being awakened from the nightmare of how selfish I was and how dramatic and just problematic my life was. Extreme levels of insecurity. And through being in recovery, and, for me, my experience is that I worked the 12 steps, that I have been, awakened and freed from that trying to get and thinking that life is all about getting something. it's so much more than just not using drugs or not engaging in that behavior, that old behavior. I have had a spiritual awakening of sorts, and things seem to be very different for me in recovery now. I think I should probably touch on, the higher power thing. The 12-step programs have this this integral part of it being that it is a spiritual program and it's not religious. So it's not God from that sort of perspective. I think for me, I think of my higher power as just being the universe. A lot of people have their own conception of what God is to them, and it's up to you to decide. For me particularly, I was really anti any kind of religion growing up, and when I came into recovery, and I had to surrender to some kind of higher power, because I realized that I'd been anti-God for a long time. I'd been anti-spirituality, and it didn't get me anywhere. I was at a complete rock bottom, and I didn't know how to live my life. So I had to sort of at least just sort of agree to perhaps think that maybe there is some sort of power out there. That was literally it. That's all I'm sort of concerned about is it's the universe, karma, some kind of higher power. Think about what it might be for you, and that's it. Is that we in the 12-step fellowships, we ask every day to have our to sort of be guided through our day, and that's literally all I ask for. Is I just ask for a little bit of guidance. I ask for things to kind of be provided to me, and you know what, from someone that thought it was all mumbo jumbo and quite honestly a whole lot of rubbish, things do go smoothly, and I find that when I put my faith in something and Oliver's not trying to run the show, things go smoother. So that's where that comes from. And helping people, I get out of myself when I help people. I do presentations for Narcotics Anonymous in rehabilitation centres, and I go and talk about my experience, much like I'm talking about my experience to you guys here today. So, look, I want to talk about, in the previous episode, we had my wonderful sister Emily on the show to talk about her experience as a family member living with somebody who was suffering from addiction and engaged in really harmful, worrying and concerning behaviour. It was such a powerful experience for me to hear her share her side of the story. We've talked about it before, but it was really, really amazing to hear that, of how I was so acutely unwell with my addiction, and how she staged that intervention. It just so happened to be at the right time where I was open to it, and I made the decision for myself to go into treatment. And since that day, I've been in lots of different ways focused on recovery. But when I went to the treatment centre, I've remained completely abstinent from drugs and alcohol since that date, which was over 4 years ago now. I wanted to talk a little bit about today's episode about what options are available for families. Maybe you're a brother or sister or mother or father of somebody who's going through that same experience that I was going through, where you can see your loved one is suffering from addiction and they're engaged in behaviour that's really worrying. I think for my mum and for my sister to see me disappear for days, or just intoxicated and aggressive, and to see my life crumbling around me was so painful for them, and they felt incredibly powerless. And I want to talk to you today about how you don't have to you don't that your loved one does not have to go through that, on their own, and that there is hope for you and for them, that they can get the treatment that they need, and that they have a shot at recovery and at getting well and rebuilding their life. There are lots of avenues available for families of people who are suffering from addiction. So the first one I wanted to talk about was Al-Anon. Now, Al-Anon is a 12-step program for people whose loved ones are going through, for Al-Anon it's for alcoholism, but I think you can apply it to any kind of addictive behaviour. And Al-Anon's purpose is to help families and friends of alcoholics recover from the effects of living with someone whose drinking is a problem. This is but one option. It's a place where, much like a normal another 12-step fellowship, is that you're in a room surrounded by people who have the same experience. So there will be people there who are family, members of a family who perhaps one of their loved ones is suffering from addiction or alcoholism, just addictive behaviour. There are Al-Anon meetings online and in person once the COVID-19 situation gets some level of control. You can visit www.al-anon.org.au for more information. Now, the other option, and one that I would really, really recommend, is to give Hills and Ranges Private a call if you are a family member of somebody who is suffering from addiction. You can check out Hills and Ranges Private has a really good website. It's www.rehab.melbourne. And there, basically you can get in touch with people who are qualified counsellors and discuss sort of how you're feeling and what options are there for you and for your loved one. It's really important that you may not be able to help your loved one at this time right now, but you can certainly help yourself and speak to someone about what's going on. And for me, I can talk about my experience definitely with my family, is that my mum and my sister were incredibly worried about my behaviour and that they needed to speak to someone. And when my mum spoke to a counsellor at the rehabilitation centre that I went to, she really helped put things sort of in order for my mum and put some boundaries in place and helped her see and understand what I was going through. So we'll talk about that a little bit more after the break.
Listening to the Recovery Cast by Hills and Ranges Private. Now playing daily on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. For more shows, visit us at www.rehab.melbourne.
You're on the Recovery Cast with Oliver, and we're just talking about families and what options are available and what that experience is like living with someone who's going through addiction. I didn't particularly think about what I was putting my family through. It was all about me when I was going through addiction. And since I've gotten into recovery, I really have realised what I did and the way I treated my family. My behaviour was really out of line. I stole from my family to fund my addictive behaviour, and I put them through aggression and all kinds of really, really worrying behaviour, and they just saw me basically destroy my life. What my counsellor said to my mum when I was in treatment was that it was really up to me to make that decision that I wanted to be in recovery. And what my mum had been doing was actually enabling me by giving me a place to live and money and all of that sort of stuff. And it was an indirect thing, because she was actually, she loved me and she wanted to help me, but she didn't understand that it's actually up to the person who is suffering from addiction to help themselves. And by providing me with somewhere to live and giving me money, she was actually making my problem worse, because she was allowing me to continue that behavior. And what happened then was that she put an ultimatum in place to say that as long as you're in recovery and as long as you're trying to fix your life and do the right thing, you will always have somewhere to live, and that I will always support you. But if you don't do that, then I can't support you. And that gave me an amazing sort of boundary in place to say, well, wow, if I relapse, then I won't have anywhere to live. And so that was just one of the reasons why I stayed clean, because I realized that there was no option to use for me. And since then, I mean, that was the beginning of me having healthy boundaries put in place for myself. And I realized that today, when I have a thought about using, that there's no option for me to use, because I will lose everything that I've got. For the people who are in recovery, who are listening now, this journey it's so phenomenal, because it is a place where we can learn to do the right thing. And I don't do any of those old behaviors anymore, and that now, because I'm in recovery, I've actually repaired all of those damages that I caused to my family. My relationship with my sister, as you heard on yesterday's episode, is fantastic. We hang out together, we have family, walks and family dinners and things like that. We trust each other, we help each other out. And it's phenomenal that I was always the black sheep of the family, and my sister was always so high achieving, and everything seemed to go very simply for her. But the reason for that was just because I was suffering from addiction and I was creating my own problems, whereas she wasn't. And now I'm actually on that same path as her, is that I'm a contributing member to society. I'm a family member that isn't the one that's causing problems. And what's actually the most amazing thing for me about being in recovery is that she's come to me for advice. And that was absolutely unheard of. She would have never come to me for advice at any point in my life before I got into recovery and worked a really strong recovery program. She comes to me for advice and talks about her situations, whether there's housemates that are causing trouble, or any kind of relationship sort of things, or work stuff, that I can be a normal person and a shoulder for her to lean on, and not just her be a shoulder for me to lean on, and have it being one way. That is the most precious gift, is that I can be the big brother that I was when I was really young. But then when I started using, from being a teenager onward, I was actually absent. Maybe even when I wasn't physically absent, I was absent mentally. And today I'm not. Today I'm a present family member, and I've just realized that family is the most important thing in my life, apart from my recovery, of course, because if I didn't have my recovery, I wouldn't have my family. But it's this episode, I just wanted to say to everybody out there that, there is hope for your family member who's suffering from addiction, whether they're still using or they have begun that journey into recovery. If I could do it, then anybody can. And I've seen countless stories of people getting well and repairing their family relationships. And it's a slow process. It only happens one day at a time, but it's there for anyone. And if you are a family member or even just an individual who wants to talk about it, then please go to www.rehab.melbourne, talk to one of the counsellors at Hills and Ranges Private. They will continue that conversation with you and give you all the information that you need. And in the meantime, I'd like to thank you for joining me for another episode of the Recovery Cast. we will see you tomorrow for another episode. Have a great day. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the Recovery Cast. For more, visit us at www.rehab.melbourne.